All right, guys, so I'm out here. I'm kind of messing with my fuel line and my clamps and stuff, and I'm going to use it on this frame for the 4-door 55. I'm basically trying to use stuff that I have here. So I tried something and it actually works, so I'll run you through it. But basically what I'm trying to do is figure out, how I'm going to clamp my new fuel line to the frame. I'm not using a reproduction, fuel line that goes on the frame that's pre-bent and all that. I got a roll here of aluminum fuel line that I bought from Summit. It's a 25-foot roll, and it was like 20 bucks, I think, or 18 bucks or something. I don't remember, but it's just cheaper that way than me going down and buying 2 long sticks and putting a union in it from the parts store for just steel. So I have done this many times. I've done this, I don't even know how many times. A lot of my older cars I've built, I've done it this exact way. I was actually shown this by an older hot rodder. This guy was building hot rods in the 50s and 60s, and I learned a lot from that guy. A lot of my metal stuff I learned from this guy, and this is what he does, so I'm going to run you through it. And I've actually told this to a few other guys through the years, how I do something, and all they do is shake their heads and say it doesn't work, it'll never work. And it has for me ever since, and it always worked for him. So I don't know why they're going to argue with it, but whatever. There's always those guys, you know what I mean? This is aluminum. And what I do is I have actual fittings here, steel fittings, flare fittings. And what I end up doing is I single flare the aluminum. You can't double flare it because it'll crack, but you can single flare this. I have done it many times. So this is what I'm going to do again. But anyway, so you can argue all you want. I know from experience that it works. Anyway, so I had 2 new fittings here. I've got a whole bunch of these in a box over there. And anyway, so I basically will, when I flare this with my flaring tool, just a single flare, I do it very slowly. When I turn it to flare it, I go real slow. And I put a little bit of whatever I got usually laying around, like, WD-40 or PD Blaster or something. I'll spray just a little bit in there and just do it real slow. But anyway, he showed me that, and that's what he used to always do to his old, Model A's and all that stuff that he used to build all the time. He used to build old school street rods. But anyway, kind of neat deal here. But anyway, it's a cheap way to do a fuel line because that whole roll is like 20 bucks. Now I always do 3/8. I have always done 3/8. I have never done a small fuel line like this. And I mentioned it in my other videos, this is 5/16. And I am going to be running a 305 small block in here. And there's a couple other reasons why I went ahead and went with 5/16. The fuel tank sending unit that I got give to me was brand new from my cousin. He had bought a 5/16 by accident, and then he ended up buying a brand new 3/8 one, so he gave me his old one, his old brand new one that hadn't been put in yet. But anyway, it's 5/16, and anyway, so that's another reason why I'm running it. The other reason is I have a brand new in the box fuel pump. It's a chrome Holley mechanical block mount fuel pump, 7 psi, and it has the 1/4-inch holes in it. So it's really just for, like 5/16 fittings. Doesn't have big enough holes in it to put the 3/8 fittings in. So anyway, I'm just going to do 5/16 fuel line. And the reason is the reality, I don't think it needs that big of a fuel line. Now that Monte Carlo that I pulled that 305 out of has a 3/8 fuel line. But, it should have, in my opinion. But the reality is, with this car, this is going to be cruiser. As someone ever drive down the highway in, I think it's going to get plenty of fuel. So I'm not worried about it. Now I could see if I took it to the drag strip to run a 1/4 mile and I had it on the floor for a 1/4 mile, yeah, it might cause a problem of running out of fuel on the big end. But I doubt it. Now, if I had a 350, I definitely would not put this in here. But, the other parts that I have here already is the reason I'm doing it. So I'm tired of explaining myself, so let's just get to it. This is what I'm doing. This is how I do it. Single flare, aluminum fuel line. You can argue all you want. It's always worked for me. I, honest to God, have never, ever had one leak, ever. But as I'm flaring it, I pay attention to it, and I look at it with my wife has a jeweler's loop in there, and for years I had a magnifying glass in my toolbox, but I don't know whatever happened to it, so now I use the loop. But every time I flare it, I look at it really close and make sure there's no cracks or something looks funny. But It's not like it's a super huge deal. If it does leak, I can cut it and redo it. But anyway, what I got here is these clamps. I've got a whole bunch of clamps here, and I've used these on my cars before on fuel lines. You know, the standard old hardware store clamps that have the rubber isolator on them. To me, lately, the last few years, I've been looking at these as I don't really like them for automotive with the rubber on there. That's the only thing that makes it look like it's for your house, you know. So what I did was I took the isolator off, just peeled it off there, and then to me it looks like a factory style frame clamp, you know, that could be on there. So these are 1/4 inch. Now what I noticed was when I put it on the fuel line and pressed it together, it was sliding on it. It wasn't tight. So what I did was I come over here to this board and I took all my clamps over here. I slid every one of them clamps on this tube right here. This is a piece of 5/16 steel line, and I slid them all on like that. And then I took a punch that's kind of sharp on the end, and I stuck it right there, and I whacked it with that hammer. So what I did basically was peened it, just put a little dent in it, and that made it tight enough on the aluminum fuel line to hold it. So anyway, it's redneckery at its finest, man, and that is how I roll. But I can tell you this, if I can save a dime on something, that's the route I'm going. So I'm that guy that will drive 50 miles to save $1. You know what I mean? I'll burn out $30 worth of fuel, but you know, I saved $1. But anyway, I had 2 packs of these. I've opened one of them, but these are ARP brand new bolts. These are black oxide colored, but they're hex head, and they're metric is what sucks. These were part of when I had a Jaguar I was going to build, a little 82 XJ6 Jaguar. I was doing a small block conversion on. I was going to street route it out a little bit, but I ended up trading it off and got rid of it, but I kept all the crap that I'd bought for it. But anyway, so what I'll do is I'll drill and tap the frame, that metric size there, which looks like it's a M6. It doesn't tell me actually what the thread is, but I do have a thread checker I can figure it out on. Anyway, so I'll drill and tap the frame, and I'll use these ARP bolts in these clamps. And, you know, I'm using the bolts because I have them here, and I'm using the clamps because I have them here. So this will end up looking pretty nice, and, you know, it didn't break the bank because I'm using stuff that I had laying around, and that's the cool part to me. But anyway, I'm going to run it kind of high on the frame. This is normally when I do a fuel line on a car, if I do a custom fuel line, I'll try to run it on the outside of the frame rail because, you know, I usually have dual exhaust, and I don't like the idea of the heat being on that fuel line and getting that fuel line hot. So with this car, if you've been following the build thread, I am just doing a single exhaust system on this car because it is just a 305 and a little 600 Holley carburetor. This is not going to be a race car. It's going to be something to get on the highway with and enjoy at cruising speed. But anyway, I've decided I'm going to go ahead and put it on the inside of the frame over here, which is the side that it would go on from the factory, because the single exhaust is going to be on this side. This is actually the factory muffler bracket here. But anyway, I'll have a Y pipe up there with the 2 going into 1 right here, and then I've got a MagnaFlow turbo muffler that'll go on here that actually may be too loud because I want the car to be super quiet. I want to be able to carry on a conversation with somebody in the back seat. So anyway, I have that MagnaFlow. It's brand new in the box. I only have 1, and then I have a whole bunch of exhaust pipe and exhaust tips or bins, pre-bins and stuff, 45s and 90s. And I don't have enough to do a dual exhaust system. And if I had to buy another one of those MagnaFlow mufflers, those mufflers I think are like $115 a piece or something. I don't want to spend the money. Just put single exhaust on it and be done with it. I don't care. It's a 305, man. Give me a break. So anyway, this is what I'm going to do. It's what I've decided. Now I do have to go back in and I have to notch my bracket right here. I'm just going to angle cut it right here, and then I'm going to go back with that paint. I've still got some of this left, and I'm just going to take a little paintbrush and just touch up where I cut it. But I've got to cut this at an angle right here to get this off, because I've decided to run the fuel line on the top edge of the frame right here. It actually fits right down in between the body mount bracket. So it's like perfect. So it goes in that one and it goes in behind this one, but it won't go in behind this one, so I got to notch it. But anyway, that fuel line will come up to about in here somewhere, and then it'll kick over to go to the sending unit. And then the rest of it, I can just run it right up the top edge up there. I will put my idler arm up there and see how far exactly I can get it. But more than likely, I'll probably get up to here, and then I'll kick it over and run it on the top of the frame up and around. So that's pretty much where I'm going to go with that. But anyway, so that's a fuel system, the fuel line, I guess, for the four-door, and what I'm going to do. So I'm kind of happy because, you know, the sending unit was new. The fuel pump I had here new. Didn't spend any money on it. It's from a past project. I actually think I ordered that in, and it was, I didn't know it was 1/4-inch fittings, and I needed it for a 3/8 line, so that pump just sat there in the box brand new. But I ended up with another one, and I drilled the fittings out, holes out, and I tried to tap them bigger, which I did. But by the time I made the hole bigger to put a bigger fitting in there to run 3/8 fuel line on that fuel pump, it's really close to the edge, and it almost kind of looks like a crack in it down there at the edge with a jeweler's loop when you put it up there. So that's why I never did run it. So I actually have 2 of them. But my idea is I'll use the brand new one in the box that's not drilled on this car, and then in case the fuel pump diaphragm goes out or anything, I'll just take the diaphragm stuff out of the other one and put on this one. Maybe. Sounds good anyway. Anyway, guys, that's what a fuel system's going to be. I'm going to get back on it and start doing this here. I do have to say, if you've never bought a roll of fuel line like this, like I've done, it comes spooled up like this. What you can do is you lay it out on the floor and you just step on it like that and then just roll it out. And it usually does a pretty decent job of, you know, making it kind of straight. I've loved it right there, but yeah, you get the idea. Anyway, let the redneckery commence. Thanks for watching. All right, guys, so I got the fuel line mounted, drilled and tapped. I left it all long, of course, because I'll have to bend it over, go to the sending unit, and then I'll have to cut it and then flare it. And I've got 2 fittings here. I'm going to pick out the best. Actually, this one looks really nice. Nice gold color on it. So that's the one I'll use right there. So anyway, I got it. I had to notch that. So I got to go in and I'm going to take these 2 clamps loose, lift the line up, and then brush paint all that touch up with the same paint. But I run it across the top edge of the frame, and then when it got about right here, I kind of just bent it upwards and got it up over the top of the frame. That way it's a little bit further away from the exhaust, but up and over, and there we go. So I left it long up there as well so I can get it all bent and cut. That end will just get a piece of 3/8 fuel hose clamped on it. I will put a light flare in it to help, you know, hold the hose and the clamp on it. But anyway, it has to have a flex line on this end because it's going to the pump. Now your engine will move and your frame won't. So I'm going to put rubber hose on that end, but this end will have a flare fitting on the end of it. Anyway, that's it.